Well, it's time right now for the Boxing on TV rankings. It's being brought to us this week by BillyCBoxing.com. If you're looking for the latest fight results or stories that are fit to print, check out www.BillyCBoxing.com. And by the way, you can also watch this show on it. But this week's Boxing on TV rankings goes like this. There was two that we scored, okay? One was ESPN, the ESPN broadcast that took place on Friday. It was their fifth broadcast of the year already, and it was the Boxino tournament. This is a tough one to score because the first criteria is the quality of the main event. This particular fight, and will be the case this coming weekend, it's a tournament, so really it's all packaged together. Now, with that said, I thought that it was very good, both the main and co-main event, if you want to call the main event Brandon Adams. But it was very good, the Boxino tournament. What else can I say? All the matches I thought were matched very well. They were fights, and they were exciting to watch. I score it a 4 as very good. As the undercard, too. I score that a 4 because it was the same as above. Eric Botcher, who's the matchmaker for these, did a great job of bringing these fighters in. So for the main event and co-main event, both score a 4, which is very good. As far as the quality of the crowd and excitement from the crowd, to be honest with you, I was actually disappointed in the crowd. I scored it a 3, a satisfactory, but I was disappointed in the crowd. They didn't seem too lively for this. It wasn't dead either. I mean, it wasn't like it was a dead crowd, and it didn't seem like an overzealous crowd either. It was the same with my opinion with judging and looking at how many fannies were in the seats. It wasn't empty, but it wasn't full either. Listen, I give it a 3. I think it was just, that was really the fairest way to do it. Wasn't anything great, the crowd. The seats weren't overly packed, but it wasn't bad enough to give them an unsatisfactory or poor grade. I scored a 3. Now, as far as the fourth criteria, the officials' performance, listen, again, I'm going to give it a 3. There was nothing great, nothing bad. I had a couple of hang-ups, but I'm going to be okay with that. I scored a 3. Now, as far as the commentators' performance, here's the deal. I score the ESPN as a 3, a satisfactory. Why? Well, because Joe Tessitore was unusually funny, and Teddy responded. Those two carried the show. They were good to bring it to a 3. Because that's the only reason I'm scoring that satisfactory. Again, Todd Grisham is terrible. This guy does not belong in a boxing broadcast. I'm sorry, he doesn't. Okay, yes, he's a nice kid and all those things that Alex Papali was saying. Yes, he seems like he's an intelligent guy and all of that. But trust me, he's not a boxing guy. Boxing needs boxing people. Okay, Todd Grisham is ruining the ESPN broadcast by just being a non-boxing, reading off the teleprompter kind of a guy. All right, that's that. He just doesn't belong there. Bernardo, he was there. This guy, I mean, can they at least make him look like a real human being? He looks like a plastic figurine. He's just terrible. I know I said the same thing last week, but this guy is everything is canned with him. It's a canned question. It seems like a canned response. It's his canned throwing it back to Teddy and Joe. Everything is canned. His everything is perfect with his hair. I mean, come on, man. Come on. He's plastic. And please, the new blockhead guy who did the interview and everything with the weird haircut, he's this monster. If this guy isn't Lurch from the Addams Family, I don't know who is. All right? Again, ESPN, they're obviously not looking at things realistic. Does it get a bad grade? No. It gets a satisfactory thanks to Joe Tessitore and Teddy Atlas. So when you add it all up, it totals out to be 17, which when you round that off, turns out to be a 3.4. So I score the overall broadcast of ESPN's fifth broadcast from Friday night a satisfactory score. Now, the other televised event that we did a boxing on TV rating for was CBS Sports. It was their first broadcast of the year. And as far as the main event, I scored it a 3, a satisfactory. Listen, man, the main event, Derek Rossi against Muralimov, it was what it was, man. It was an evenly matched fight between two not-so-great fighters, okay? But with that said, the fight did go back and forth, and it still was two heavyweights fighting. And in my opinion, it was a satisfactory main event for TV. Satisfactory. It teetered on unsatisfactory, but it is what it was. It had two guys. Now, if Derek Rossi was in there with a better fighter, it wouldn't have been a good one. And the same thing with Muralimov. Same situation. If they were in with any different opponents, it probably would have been a stinkfest. I squeeze a 3 out of that. As far as the undercard, listen, man, unsatisfactory. I scored it a 2. This was not a great undercard for TV, period. Mike Lee was able to eat Subway sandwiches between the rounds because his opponent was so bad. The cruiserweight fight featured two fighters that should still be fighting 4 rounds in terms of the talent level. Add to the fact that cruiserweight fight was a 100% snooze fest. I couldn't squeak out a higher grade than 2. Unsatisfactory. As far as the quality of the crowd and the excitement from the crowd, well, listen, I scored that a 3. Now, the reason why I'm scoring it a 3 and I'm giving it a satisfactory score, despite a lot of empty seats, I cracked up. I literally laughed my ass off when I read a ringside account that said in front of a packed house in the casino in Queens. Come on, man. Listen, Ray Charles saw that it was not a packed house. Now, the reason why I'm giving it a satisfactory, and besides despite a lot of empty seats and no excitement during the fights, none, except during the main event, and I think Derek Rossi brought out that excitement. The only reason why I'm giving it a 3, because really it shouldn't. It should be getting an unsatisfactory. But I'm in a nice mood because of the bad weather. It was a bad weather that night, and people still showed up, and maybe that's why there wasn't as many people in the seats. How do you get all jacked up for such a terrible card? I squeak out a 3 score on that one. As far as the quality of the officials' performance, I scored it as satisfactory. I definitely had some issues with some of those referees. It seems lately that a lot of New York assigned referees like to make sure they get their coined phrase in when they know it's on TV. Makes me sick. The judges seem to be consistent with the exception of the main event score, which I thought was great. Crazy, but overall I scored it satisfactory. Now, as far as the commentators, listen, man, I scored a 1. It was poor. Colonel Bob Sheridan was one of the best boxing blow-by-blow guys around. Really, he was one of the best. He's a Hall of Famer, but let's face it, Colonel Bob is done. This guy is finished. He looked like, listen, he had more makeup and hair dye on than a $6 whore that you would pay. I'm telling you, man, it was terrible. It's time for guys like him and Jim Lampley to call it a day. This guy was worse than me when I was doing my best Porky Pig and Daffy Duck impression when I first started doing broadcasts. When you add Benny Ricardo to the mix, listen, I would rather have Ricky Ricardo from I Love Lucy. Benny Ricardo is terrible. He's a football guy. These two guys used to do a decent job, but just like somebody said, with his greasy hair and his stuck in 1970s style, 72 style hairdo, this guy was terrible. We had to endure an awful broadcast between Benny Ricardo and Colonel Bob. I originally scored it a 2, and I really wanted to give it a 0 grade, which is garbage. But based on Colonel Bob and his history of being a good broadcaster, I upped it and I scored it a 1, a poor. So when you average it all out, it turns out to be, when you add it all up, it turns out to be 12, which averages out to 2.4. When you round that off, averages out to an overall rating of unsatisfactory. So terrible broadcast on CBS. Trust me when I tell you, LDL TV and myself do a 10 times better job, even when we don't have the right stuff, than what you got forced to watch from Sal Mussolini's Final Forum broadcast on CBS. Terrible broadcast. It was an awful card. Definitely not TV worthy. That wasn't even worth a $20 ticket to go buy. Terrible. What else can I say? Hey, listen,